Welcome to Pep Talks with Eric, where we shift gears from negative feedback loops and drive towards the life we truly want. I'm your host, Eric Ayers. I believe in the power of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Together, we'll explore how connections fuel our growth and create amazing experiences. In this podcast, we'll tune out the noise of the world and tune into what we really want and what really matters. Ubuntu I am because we are. This became my mantra, my humanity, and it came at such a pivotal time. So back to my story, I was working as a burned out nurse who could not recognize myself in the mirror, could not recognize the value I was bringing to everyone around me. Now, what does this lead to? Well, this leads to wandering. It leads to roaming through seeking answers, but it leads to this loneliness because it feels as though I'm doing this alone. So I'm reacting to everyone who's in front of me. Why? Because when we are thrown into fight or flight, when we have this adrenaline-driven cocktail of chemicals that are creating emotions utilized to help us fight, fly, or freeze, all we can do is react. And in reaction, we feel lonely. So as I began to trade this in and began to seek what I wanted, instead of continuously focusing on what I didn't want, Ubuntu entered my life. Now, I remember vividly seeing this on, I'm going to call it a random post, but in my world, nothing is random. Everything is divine. This post came through, and it brought me to tears. It was a picture of Ubuntu, and it was a person crying. And simply looking at the picture, you wouldn't understand what is going on. The words that I remember are something along the lines of, in an Ubuntu culture, when one of the tribal members mess up, do something wrong, they are put in the middle as the others gather around them. And they spend up to 2 days telling this person who messed up how amazing they are, the value they bring to not only their life, but to the community. And they start identifying the 99 things that they do right instead of focusing on this one thing that they did wrong. Now, this idea infused in me like that. Now, remember, this began with me searching for something that is good. I was introduced to love, unconditional love in a different manner outside of family, from a patient and a patient's dad. That led me into saying, I want to find more good. Where is the good? And every day, goodness showed up. And then Ubuntu showed up. Now, I'm working in healthcare that is very difficult. It's very draining. It's very taxing. It's very emotionally draining, specifically. And now I'm tapping into part of my human design, which later on I discover part of my design is to create sparks of transformation. So all I knew is I was flipping perspectives, and Ubuntu became a tool. Ubuntu became a way of understanding and a way for me to relate. Now, I want to pause and I want to welcome you to the first host on mic on Pep Talks with Eric. This has been an incredible journey to get to where I am now. And I wanted to start with Ubuntu because it happened because of the collective. And my goal in this episode is to not only outline and identify how powerful Ubuntu is, but I would like to offer gratitude for the presence and the power of Ubuntu and of you. So, welcome to the show. My name is Eric Ayers. I am an alignment practitioner and a transformation guide. My focus is on helping you align to the life that you want, thereby creating the life that you want instead of being reactive and consequential to the life that you have. Because that's my journey. That's what I went through, and that's what I realized. And when we realize that when we're working in alignment with our true selves, our superpowers start highlighting. They start coming out. They start offering the way to help humanity. And that's what this journey is about. And it is a journey. So I'm so glad that you're here with me. And I'm honored to share and showcase the Ubuntu spirit that I have learned to love and appreciate and utilize in my daily life. Ubuntu, I am because we are. Ubuntu is a South African phrase, South African term. And so when I first heard this, that's what I thought was I am because we are. This is a collection, a connection of people. But we're going to dive into this deeper, and we are going to discover that Ubuntu is a way of life, right? It's a culture. Much like the culture that I seek to cultivate in businesses, in healthcare. It's all driven by Ubuntu. So I shared one story of Ubuntu, and that was, at the pivotal time of me transitioning and me beginning to transfer from bedside nurse to early management, right? And I ultimately started becoming a coach and had no idea. But Ubuntu was driving that. It was the underlying factor. And it was highlighting the goodness that those were doing. Because think about it. If I mess up and I'm in a group and I let everyone down, you do not have to tell me the things that I could have done better, because chances are I have beat myself up more than you are going to be able to. Anything you say is going to add to that. It's going to compound that. But what does that do at an energy level? Each time I'm told that I did not live up to an expectation, I'm ultimately dropping energy levels. So I'm dropping, I'm shortening, I'm lowering. What does that do in my capacity and my ability to provide my attributes to the world? Well, it decreases it. And more importantly, it throws me into reaction mode. So it throws me right back into where I began, that I'm trying to dig myself out of. Because I don't want to react, I want to respond. And in order for me to do that, I have to calm. So what happens when we're given the opportunity to become our best self? What if we flip this? And when we messed up, we were put in a situation to where our superiors told us, hey, I know you messed up. Man, we all mess up. Look at the things that you've done well this week, today, this hour. If it wasn't for you doing this, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish X, Y, and Z. What does that do? Well, that feeds us. That gives us life. that is life-giving. Because now we're back on the same page that I, as a human being, as an individual human being, are seeking to be a better version of myself. So by you speaking life into me, you are aligning to my internal design, my internal desire. And if we look at the book Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins, this is what he is illustrating, is as we emotionally climb this level of energy, we're offered more power, right? And I'm not going to get into details about this, but if we're living in grief, if we're grieving because like we're always messing up and I can't do anything right, everyone's mad at me, so on and so forth, my sadness is driving me down this rabbit hole into grief and despair. And there's not a whole lot of energy that I can use to put forth change in the world, right? Even if I'm trying, if I'm that low on the energy level, it's going to be very difficult for me to hop out of there. But if I have colleagues, if I have bosses, if I have others helping me on this way, on this journey, I actually may be able to climb out of this. And that's what happened in my life. I had the ability to tap into someone else's energy that they were feeding into me. And once that happens, there's a shift, but it's almost like this momentous wave that comes and you literally ride the wave and you keep expanding. So at the core, Ubuntu is the energy needed in order to propel us forward as an individual. I am because we are. I am because we are, because there's power in people. And that's from a work standpoint. When we look at this from a relationship standpoint, it becomes even more magnified. I mean, think about it. We all capitalize on one another's attributes. So for an example, if you marry someone who can do it all, then where's your value found? What do you bring to the table then? There's nothing you can bring to the table. So it's misaligned. That imbalance creates a misalignment. And all of a sudden, one person is living and driving towards a purpose of fulfilling in the marriage, but the other person may feel purposeless. So instead, what if we looked at this as, wait a minute, I have strengths, I have weaknesses. You have strengths, you have weaknesses. Can my strengths fulfill and take care of your weaknesses? And likewise, can my weaknesses be completed and fulfilled by your strengths? Chances are, yes. And these are the beauty of attributes. And this is the beauty of allowing those attributes to shine when needed. This, to me, is the epitome, the ultimate illustration of the yin yang. Because it takes both. Because in my weaknesses, I elevate your strengths, thereby creating an understanding of your purpose. In my weakness is your purpose. And likewise. So this is absolutely beautiful because this begins with entering situations, entering groups, entering conversations with the understanding of I'm not alone. And what if you're not wrong? Because ultimately, that's what we find ourselves in. We find ourselves in these situations, and I do it all the time. It's not like I'm perfect and I have this full understanding. The Ubuntu is simply and profoundly my metrics. It's what I depend on in order to see where I am, how much more I need to work on, right? So we come to situations and our ego kind of elevates sometimes and says, I am right. Well, once ego comes in and says, I'm right, we're challenged with potentially being wrong. And that leads down to this cascade of reaction. And that reaction, again, is directly related to survival mode. So, a tool, and this is going to sound super simple. It's actually going to sound like there's no way this works. I'm going to ask you to do yourself a favor. When you're triggered, when you're in traffic and someone cuts you off, when your significant other yells at you or says something that you feel is undeserving of you, if someone yells at you, if whatever, that trigger, we are triggered because there's an emotion that is released in us. And our ego stands up and says we have to protect. Okay? You're going to have this feeling. So when this happens, say nothing and deep breathe for 1 minute. They can keep talking if they want. If they are and it's interrupting your flow, ask them, say, I'm focusing here. Can we please resume this in a moment? Breathe through this. Now, the reason why a minute, and this is fascinating, is the chemical cocktail that is released in this emotional reaction that you're about to have. Those chemicals, those driving hormones, they last a minute. Okay? When you have a cortisol release, secondary to an adrenaline rush, which is that rush that you feel, and then it starts releasing all of these other chemicals to get you ready to fight or run or freeze, whatever your modality is. All of those chemicals, they last 1 minute. If you breathe, and while you're breathing, you can say to yourself, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. And breathe. After a minute, that feeling's gone. After a minute, you can now tap back into your analytical mind, because when we are in fight or flight, it's our lizard brain. Our amygdala comes in and says, you have limited amount of brain capacity right now because all we need to do is keep you alive. Well, chances are if you're able to breathe for a minute, your life's not in danger. This is not a life or death situation, but our body has no idea. So we need to recondition our body in order to say, you're safe, you're calm. Breathe through that. After those chemicals are gone, our analytical mind is then able to kick back on, and then we can have rational discussions. Then we're no longer in fight or flight. We're back into homeostasis, which is where we want to be anyway. Okay? So that's my challenge to you. And this ultimately allows you to breathe life into humanity and those around you. And then when the power that you have by not reacting and responding appropriately, it breathes life into the situation. This begins the foundation of an Ubuntu culture within whatever you're doing. All right? Got it? So breathe for a minute. And here's the thing. Here's how we get to Ubuntu. Starting with ourselves. And this is a very good segue. Ubuntu starts with forgiveness of self. I am not perfect. You are not perfect. We are not perfect. We don't have to be perfect. Why? Because Spiritually, we are perfect. The human experience that we are here to have allows us the opportunity to try, to not be exactly what maybe others think we are or what others think we could be. So when you don't live up to that expectation, or you find yourself living through someone else's conditioning of you, attempting to live up to someone else's unrealistic expectation, forgive yourself. Identify it. And then forgive yourself and then let it go. Now, part of that forgiveness, sometimes you are going to get triggered and you're not going to identify it for a couple of days. That's okay. Why? Because you identified it. That's your starting point. And then pay attention to that, because our energy flows where our attention goes. So as we draw attention to this, our energy is going to flow to this, and we're going to recognize it sooner and sooner and sooner. And that refractory period is going to keep going down to the point of, we're going to get to the point of not even opening our mouth for this. And we're going to let those chemicals dissipate. And then we're going to respond in a loving and powerful way. All right? That's the first step. And that starts with us, because that's that's the only control we have, is our response. And that begins with our interpretation of the input coming in. Okay? So back to the example. Whatever triggered you, it's only a trigger because we interpreted it to be a trigger. So once we get down to the point of controlling our emotions, our energy and motion, once we get to that, then we have this energy that we can utilize to then begin to work on the core cause of this, which is a misinterpretation of a situation. So what happens if, when someone cuts us off in traffic, we immediately say, man, they must have an emergency. They must be in a hurry. I'm going to bless you. May you have an amazing day. All of a sudden, I have the power. And also, I bless them. That energy that I bless them with travels into their life as well. Remember, I am because we are. So we begin to shift our interpretation of our inputs, and that's our thoughts. That's the things we feel, the things we smell, taste, see, hear. All of our senses, all of our intellectual properties. When we receive information, how do we interpret it? Because that interpretation then leads to our emotion, our energy and motion, which energy needs to be utilized to go in the motion, in the direction of what we're after. So this is the beginning of the mindset shift. And it starts with the Ubuntu understanding of I am because we are. Because if we think that we're in this alone, everyone out there is going to trigger us. Because we're not seeing the power that we have in the connectiveness to those around us. And we don't understand the power that we have, that we can help them once we understand those aspects in us. So when you're with another person, celebrate them. Ego comes in again when maybe someone's doing something better than us. But remember the example. Their strengths maybe are weaknesses. And likewise, we have a strength to their weakness. And this isn't to say I'm better than you. That's where this needs to be eliminated. Because we need to understand that our attributes are called at the perfect time. And if someone is crushing it at whatever they're doing, celebrate with them. My wife and I had an incredible mentor in our lives who, at a time where she and I were beginning to transition and trying to figure out what life was supposed to be like, instead of living a life that maybe someone else created or suggested for us, this amazing human being fed us with life. And one thing that he always did, which I found incredible then, and I find even more incredible now, is when we had something good happen, it doesn't matter if it was seen as very little or something huge. His exact words were, "Oh, I celebrate with you." Now, that's amazing, because at no point was he saying, "I'm comparing myself to you, and I'm not comparing you to me." There's no comparison. It's, dude, we're all in this together, and we're here to support and grow one another. We're supposed to forgive one another, and we're going to celebrate these wins. Celebrate the accomplishments of others. Forgive others when they might not live up to your expectations. This is where I continue to shift and continue to work and grow in this area. And it's all deconditioning, right? It's all deconditioning down to the core of this. But if I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. And one thing that helps us through this is identifying and coming at situations with the idea that I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm believing that you had no ill intent behind this. I'm believing that you're doing the best you can, just like I'm doing the best I can. And you truly did this because you thought it was the right thing to do. God, what energy shift that brings alone. I can feel it right now, because that speaks to me as well. How powerful, how impactful is that? And just like yourself, forgive them. Forgive them and encourage them. Tell them the amazing things that they do well. The amazing things that they've impacted in your life. And as the group, as we begin to close up here, here's where Ubuntu brings it all together. There's another story I heard through this journey. And this anthropologist is at an Ubuntu tribe. And he says, I'm going to do an experiment. So he has these group of kids. And he says, okay, when I count to 3, everyone take off running. And whoever gets to that tree first wins this bushel of oranges. So he says, all right, 1, 2, 3. And all the kids lined up side by side, held hands, and walked across the finish line together. And they all got an orange. So when the anthropologist asked, why did you do that? Why didn't you try to beat the others and win? One kid spoke up and said, why should I win if it means the others lose? Ubuntu. And that's it. That's the epitome of everything that we're talking about. Why should one person be elevated? Why should one person win at the disposal of other people? Now, we should all win. We should all expand, but not at the expense of others. What I propose is we shift that. We understand that we bring value to the table. You bring value to everything you do. You are so loved and you are so valued. And so am I. And when we're loved and valued and know that we're loved and valued, we bring a higher energy to the table. We bring a higher awareness. We bring our true self. And in that true self allows us to radiate with our power and potential. And this is how we tap into our potential. This is how we begin to use human connectiveness to enhance humanity. Ubuntu has been described as the plural of humanity. Think about that. That is profound, because what that is suggesting is that we look at humanity as singular, as me, as I. And Ubuntu is about we, not about me. What concreted in this cultural idea of Ubuntu for me was I was out on a hike, which is where I clear my head and I reconnect with Mother Earth. And I said out loud, Ubuntu, I am because we are. And I followed it up with, and we are because I am. Understand that in this collectiveness, everyone is valued. Everyone has a part in this. And it starts with understanding you were treasured, you were valued, and you have the ability to change the world. And it starts by changing the way we interpret our interactions, starting with our thoughts. So remember, Ubuntu, I am because we are. And in that collectiveness, know that we all need your superpower. And I can't wait to see it shine. I'm here to help if you need me. Please reach out. You can find me on my website, lightbydesign.me. Send me an email at eric@lightbydesign.me. Or check me out on LinkedIn. Send me a message there. Again, I'm here to help. And I'm super excited to be on this journey with you. And I'm so ready to expand the collectiveness of humanity with you. Be well, be love, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me on Pep Talks with Eric, where together we shift our focus, embrace connection, and drive towards a more fulfilling life. Remember, it's not just about where you're headed, but how you choose to travel along the way. As you continue your journey, know that you have the power to change lanes and focus on the path that leads to positivity, purpose, and connection. Let's stay connected and continue empowering your journey one commute at a time. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. And until then, be well, be loved.